This is Morning Edition on KUNC. Scientists are worried that a tiny water-dependent insect called the Arapahoe Snowfly is nearing extinction. They, along with several conservationists, are petitioning the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to consider protecting the snowfly on the endangered species list. It's believed to have once thrived along tributaries of the Poudre River northwest of Fort Collins, but development is threatening its survival. KUNC's Kirk Sigler reports on how this tiny insect could thwart some big plans.
So why should we even care about this minute little insect that's barely bigger than an eyelash?
They're all locked away in these cabinets here.
To answer this question, we're visiting a cool, dark lab that smells of formaldehyde.
If I can find, we can find it. Which container did you put it right in here, did you?
Entomologist Boris Kondratiev and one of his research assistants are rummaging through a bin housing small test tubes with insects floating in alcohol.
Sure, right there.
Yeah, here's Capnia Arapahoe, right there.
Capnia Arapahoe is commonly known as the Arapahoe Snowfly. It and more than 3 million other rare aquatic insects are housed here at Colorado State University's Museum of Arthropod Diversity.
For the average citizen, this is just a little black bug, and what does it mean in the big picture?
A lot, if you ask Kondratiev, who was the first to discover the snowfly in the late 1980s. He says more than 100 years of water diversions and other development have whittled the insect's habitat down to just 2 tributaries of the Poudre River. Kondratiev says the snowfly helps keep a stream's ecosystem in check, and it's worth preserving.
Because it then protects that entire system.
And see, the snowfly is key prey for a much more visible and iconic stream resident, trout. But the fly, in turn, also feeds on sediment in streams, which would otherwise sit idle and wash downstream, and degrade the water so many of us depend on. Miles downstream from where the snowfly live, the Poudre River spills over a diversion dam north of Fort Collins. It's where conservationist Gary Walkner has suggested we meet to illustrate why the snowfly is so important to the bigger picture.
Water quality is a massive financial issue for every farmer and every city who uses Poudre River water.
Walkner, who heads up the group Save the Poudre, says the water here is of low quality. He says all the damming, altering, and diverting of the river upstream has over time created an unnatural environment and an unhealthy river right here.
And so that snowfly way up there in the canyon could be tied to the economic environmental health of the entire Poudre River Basin.
Save the Poudre is one of the groups behind the recently filed petition that urges the Fish and Wildlife Service to consider listing the Arapahoe Snowfly. Which brings us to another interesting twist in our quest to learn why a tiny aquatic insect can matter so much. Let's say the federal government were to extend Endangered Species Act protections for the snowfly. Such a listing could thwart, or at least limit, all sorts of future plans to tap into Poudre River water.
There's no question throughout the American West that it has been used for just that, to stop something.
Brian Werner is with Northern Water, the agency responsible for providing water to many cities and farms along the booming North Front Range. He doesn't think the Arapahoe Snowfly will impact some of the agency's more pressing water storage projects.
I think everybody in our organization, in the water community, agrees that we need to protect species. There's no question about that. I think it boils down to, is it one that is worthy of designation?
That's a question the Fish and Wildlife Service will have to answer.
At this point, we have not reviewed the petition, and we do not know the status of the funding when it will be available to review the petition.
The agency's spokeswoman Diane Katzenberger says her office is inundated with endangered species petitions, and she says all have to contain convincing science to justify why the service should even consider a listing.
So in other words, Kurt Sigler just can't say, hey, I'm not seeing any more cardinal blue butterflies in my backyard. I think you should go study them. You're going to have to give us some substantive scientific information.
Backers of the petition believe they've made a solid case. Under the Endangered Species Act, the service has 90 days to reply, but considering the agency's current workload, a decision on whether or not to even study the snowfly likely won't come until next year. Scientists, meanwhile, say time is running out for the Arapahoe Snowfly. Back at the CSU lab, Dr. Boris Kondratiev says, think of the Arapahoe Snowfly as one of the important ingredients in a salad bar.
For me, it might be, the tomatoes on the salad bar. It might be the nice cucumbers. It's going to be definitely an ingredient of the salad bar that's important to have that salad that you really enjoy to eat before you have the main course.
The salad bar will still be open if the snowfly goes extinct, but Kondratiev says the main course, consider that as the water in our metaphor, it may be less healthy and more expensive to treat. For KUNC, I'm Kirk Sigler.